Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our weekly webinar. My name is Lisa Doe. I'm an attorney here at Beresford Booth in the Family Law Group. Today, I'll be covering all things child support, what is considered income, what deductions from income are permitted, how to calculate monthly child support, circumstances where you would pay a lower amount, and finally, I'll touch on child support issues outside of the monthly child support amount. It's important to know that statutes or the law govern child support, and what that means is the laws will tell us what to include as income, how to calculate net income, and what the monthly child support amount should be. So in terms of income, for child support purposes, all income of each parent's household must be disclosed and considered by the court, but only the income of the parents will be used when actually calculating child support. So you're not going to use income of other people in the household, such as new partners or adult relatives that live with you. And so under the statute there, they list all income sources that are to be included in gross monthly income. And it's numerous, but it's not exclusive. And so the statute provides that all income from any source, whether it's listed there or not, is to be included. And for example, stock awards are not listed in the statute, but they can be considered income. And I've noticed that some clients are surprised to hear that spousal support, bonuses, Social Security benefits, rental income, either from rental property or rent that a roommate pays you, are considered income when calculating child support. So the statute also provides what income sources are excluded from gross monthly income, but they still must be disclosed. And I've listed them here. So like I said, income of a new spouse or a partner, income of other adults in the household, child support from other relationships, gifts, prizes, food stamps, public assistance or benefits, and then also overtime or income from second jobs. Now, it isn't just any overtime or any income from second jobs. It has to meet certain criteria. So it has to be beyond 40 hours per week, and it has to be averaged over a 12-month period. That extra income must be worked to provide for the family's current needs, to retire past relationship debts or retire child support debt. And then the court needs to find that the income will cease when that party has paid off his or her debts. And this can be hard to do, to approve all of this criteria and have the court find that. And it just, like I said, it just can't be because a parent decided to work overtime for extra money. So under the law, you have to provide 2 years of tax returns and current pay stubs to verify income, and then other sufficient documentation for income that for whatever reason may not appear on tax returns or pay stubs. And the court rules for different counties have expanded on this statute, and they are requiring bank statements and statements for financial accounts. Other relevant documents may be business reports if a parent has their own business or an interest in a business, rental agreements for any rental income a parent may receive, reports for stock awards if for whatever reason they're not showing up on pay stubs or tax returns, and court orders if you're receiving spousal support. So a common question I get is, what happens when a parent chooses not to work or works less than they could? And this is called being voluntarily unemployed or voluntarily underemployed. And the court's going to look at a variety of factors to determine if this is the case. And if so, income will be imputed to that parent. So what that means is the court will say this parent's income will be set at a certain amount, and that amount will be used to calculate child support. And the court will also then need to decide the amount to be imputed. And so the court's going to look at information available and in this order of priority, which I list here. So the court's going to see if there's full-time earnings at the current rate of pay. There's not. The court's going to look at full-time earnings at historical or past rate of pay. And then full-time earnings at minimum wage. And finally, the median net monthly income. And this is based on government data. So if the other information is not available, that's where you're gonna get the imputed income amount from this table, right? And this table has, it's based on gender. So it's gonna list a median net monthly income for a specific gender in a certain age group. It's broken down by gender and age group. So after you figure out what income there is of both parents, what deductions can be made to arrive at net income, that's the next step, is to figure out the total monthly child support obligation of both parents, okay? That's the first step, or the second step after the incomes, but you're gonna calculate the total monthly child support obligation. And so this is the Washington State Child Support Schedule economic table, okay? And this is provided under the law, and it provides a monthly basic support obligation per child, right? So this leftmost column over here, this is the combined monthly net income. This is combined net incomes of both parents, okay? And then going across each column is the number of children in your family. And as you'll see, it's going to list total monthly net incomes from 1,000 all the way to 12,000, and it maxes out at 12,000, okay? And so, for example, if both parents together make, say, 6,000, and there's one child, they have one child together, the monthly child support amount is going to be $1,048, right? If there's two children, it'll be $795 for each child. And then if there's three children, it'll be $637 per child. So there are families, right, that make more than 12,000 net. And there are circumstances where the court's going to exceed the amounts in the economic table if the parents are making more than 12,000. But it's somewhat complicated in terms of what needs to be proven and what the court will look like to determine whether they will exceed that table. And it's beyond the scope of my presentation today. And so you figure out the total amount of child support per month based on the parent's net income. And so what I did was I did a sample child support worksheets. Okay, so this is what child support schedule worksheets look like, okay? They're going to list the children, how many and their ages, and then they're going to list each parent. So for this example, I did parent 1 and parent 2, right? So parent 1 here makes about $100,000 a year. That's $8,334 per month. And this was wages and salary, so W-2 wages. And then parent 2 here, they are voluntarily unemployed, right? So their income was imputed and it was based on the median net table. And it was for a person of that gender and age group. And then parent 2 also receives $500 in maintenance or spousal support, right? And so these numbers make up the total gross monthly income. That's line 1G here, right? So then the next step is the monthly deductions that are permitted from the gross income, right? That are permitted under the law. And so we have income taxes here. We have FICA. We have, this person has voluntary retirement contributions, and that's permitted in terms of a deduction, and then maintenance paid of $500. And I actually want to go back and talk a little bit more on deductions. Okay, so in terms of deductions, like I went over, that's shown in the worksheets. You can, under the law, right, you're permitted to deduct federal and state income taxes, Federal Insurance Contribution Act deductions, which is FICA, Social Security, Medicare, which I just showed you. Mandatory pension payments are also permitted, but they must be mandatory, okay? Mandatory union and professional dues, state industrial insurance premiums, and up to $5,000 per year in voluntary retirement contributions. And they have to be actually made, right? And so, for example, voluntary contributions to a 401k. And then normal business expenses or self-employment taxes if you have a business. So it's not just looking at your take-home pay on your paycheck, because a person could have other deductions on their paycheck, right? But those are not permitted in terms of when calculating child support. So we'll go back to the worksheets. So this is what I was just covering here, the deductions, right? And the spousal support is a deduction as well. That's line 2G. So parent 2 in here receives spousal support of $500. So that's deducted from parent 1 because parent 1 is paying that spousal support. So that's where you get the monthly net income, okay? About $6,200 for parent 1, $3,800 for parent 2. And so the total of that is $9,996, right? And that's where you go to the economic table. You take that combined monthly net income, and that table will tell you the basic child support obligation. So in this situation, based on the table, with that amount of combined monthly net income, both parents together need to provide a total of $2,198 in child support per month, right? And that's $1,099 per child. So remember, from the economic table, you go to the two children column, right, at a net income of the $9,996, and then it'll show you have $1,099 per child, which totals $2,198. And that's line 5 here on the worksheets, right? And to figure out how much each parent owes, you look at line 6. And it says that based on net incomes, right, parent 1's proportionate share is 61.8% of that, about $2,200 per month. And then parent 2's obligation is 38.2% of that amount, okay? And then you get to the basic child support obligation, that's line 7. So parent 1 would pay $1,358. Parent 2 would pay $839, okay? But so if, for example, parent 2 is the primary residential parent, has the children the majority of the time or more time than parent 1, then parent 1 would pay the $1,358 per month to parent 2 for child support. Parent 2 is not going to pay themselves the $839. It's their responsibility. That's just, you know, their funds that they have. So parent 1 would pay parent 2 the $1,358. That's shown on line 7 here. There are calculators out there that can help you compute these numbers. Like I use FamilySoft. It's software out there that that has these worksheets and that can calculate these numbers for me, specifically like tax obligations, which can be complicated. There are others out there as well. And then the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services, they also have a calculator online. But I can't emphasize enough, right? It's not a matter of just plugging in numbers and getting a child support obligation. It's also called the standard transfer payment. So parent one would make a standard transfer payment of the $1,358. But what I was saying is it's more complicated than that, right? Are you making sure you have all income included for both parents? Are you making the correct deductions? Are you calculating net income properly and accurately, right? You need to figure all of that out, and you need verification, right, for income and deductions before plugging in these numbers into the calculator or formula to figure out the basic child support amount. The worksheets also show like there can be monthly child support or child expenses, right, that normally are reoccurring, and those can be provided here in section 10 and 11. So it's healthcare expenses, childcare expenses, and that can be part of the calculations for the child support amounts, right? And I'll briefly touch on that a little bit later, but it gets a little bit more complicated. So for our purposes, right, we're just looking at line 7 here, the basic child support obligation. If we start to include child expenses, eventually we'll get down to line 17 here, and it'll show the amount child expenses. It can be provided as part of the monthly child support amount. Many times it's provided outside of that, and but I'll touch on that briefly in a bit. So going back to my slideshow here. So there are circumstances where the court will reduce the calculated amount of child support, this standard transfer payment that I showed you on the worksheets, and that's called a deviation, right? And I've listed here under the statute some grounds or reasons why the court would award or grant a deviation. And the most common would be if the paying parent has the children a significant amount of time, generally between 40 to 50% of the time, or if the paying parent pays child support for a child from another relationship. And it's at the court's discretion to decide the deviation that's granted and the new child support amount. So there's discretionary formulas out there the court could adopt, but they're not mandatory, and an attorney can calculate those numbers for you. But the court could say, you know, I'm going to grant a deviation of a certain percentage or a certain flat amount, right? And a deviation means a reduction in the standard calculation, right? So if it's 1,400, maybe the court will say you'll pay 1,000 instead, right? But the court will look at a variety of factors into determining whether a deviation is appropriate, and if so, the appropriate amount in terms of a reduced child support amount. So the other child support issues that I want to touch briefly on are the child expenses, which I mentioned, right? So under the statute, the parents have to share in certain child expenses outside of the monthly child support amount, okay? And that's based on a proportionate share, which are those percentages that I showed you in the worksheets, right? And child expenses include health insurance premium for the children, not for the family or the children, the parent, but just specifically for the children. Uninsured healthcare costs, daycare or child's care, education, and extracurricular activities. And so they can be shared outside, like when that expense is incurred, the parents each pay their proportionate share, or one parent advances the cost, the other parent reimburses them, or they can be included in the worksheets, right? And that can be part of the child support calculations, right? And it depends whether it's appropriate to do that or not. For example, health insurance premium, that's generally the same number each month, right? So it'd be easy to include that in the worksheet, so you don't have to worry about reimbursing the paying parent each month, right? Which can be a hassle. But there are other costs, right, where it's not reoccurring and it's different. Like they have soccer a couple months or a few months for a season a year, right? And so it's not year round, and maybe they decide they are not going to continue soccer, right? And so at that point, it wouldn't be appropriate to include it in the worksheets. But for that to be something that's reimbursed outside, or each parent pays their share to the provider. And then the other issue is tax exemptions. These are just a couple that I thought I'd mention. But the court can decide, right, under the law, or the parents can agree in terms of who will claim the children. If there's one, maybe they'll alternate. That's a common scenario. If there's two, they each claim one, or the court could just say, if there's reason to, one parent claims all the children or the children every year, right? But you could alternate. If there's one child, one parent claims 1 year, the other parent claims the other year. So there's a lot of options there, right? So I know I went through a lot of information at a high level, right, in a short amount of time. Hopefully you find it useful, and hopefully it conveys that, you know, child support is more complex than just plugging numbers into a formula. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to the webinar today and for joining us. Thank you.